Grading Pokemon cards. Well, hasn't it changed, hey? And that's what this video is all about, grading Pokemon cards. We're going to look at the data as a whole, and then I suppose drill down and look more so at the Pokemon TCG and what sort of impact it might have. Now, in our job, we use this saying, evidence, not inference. So I'm going to go through some information. Some of you guys might have come across this already. It's from the big four grading companies, and the numbers they're producing are just astounding. So we're going to go through some graphs, some information there. And when I use that term, evidence, not inference, all we're doing is looking at it. So what can we draw out just from looking at it? We're not inferring anything. At the end, I'll do that. But when we look at the facts and figures, we'll just be seeing what it says, seeing what it tells us. So if you haven't subscribed, please do so. It means a lot. We're getting very close to that 10,000 and the box opening. Also, if you want to become a channel member, you just click on my main page and join up. And then you can shoot me an email just with your YouTube handle asking any investment related questions that you want. All right, let's get stuck into it. So, grading Pokemon cards. And the reason for the title, it isn't what it used to be. I'll get into that more at the end. But I think if you're across the hobby, you sort of realize it isn't what it used to be when it comes to grading. A, the standards seem to be skewed a little bit, and B, the sheer volume is just astounding. And that's what we're going to look at today. So let's jump straight into the first slide, right? So this is the total number of graded cards per the top four in 2023. Like, these are just ridiculous numbers. So like I said, we're not going to be inferring anything. Let's just have a look, right? So PSA graded 13.5 million cards in 2023. CGC 1.7 million, SGC 1.2 million, and Beckett 772,000. They are some epic numbers, aren't they? First thing I think we could, and I know I said evidence, not inference, and this is a big inference, but the first thing we can take away from this is the rapid growth, and that rapid growth leading to, geez, these guys must be making some money. Like, the PSA must be making money hand over fist. I mean, I shouldn't say how hard is it, because I'm sure running that whole operation isn't easy, but how hard is it to get a card that someone's paid to post to you, and all you've got to do is post it back to them, and while it's with you, assess it and put it inside a slab. Like, wow, what a good business model, hey? They must be making money hand over fist. But let's have a look, right? They're up for the year. So PSA is up 21%, CGC up 8%, SGC up 29%, and Beckett up 3%. So what can we infer from that? SGC is up the most, PSA up the second most, CGC up the third most, and Beckett not much growth year on year at 3%. I did the sums on this, and 13.5 million cards at PSA equates to 37,000 cards a day. And that's every day. That's Monday through to Sunday, including public holidays. Like, it's just 37,000 a day. All I did, of course, was divide 13.5 million by 365. They are just pumping out some serious volume of cards. Now, next slide, a little bit more related to Pokemon, right? So out of those, whatever it added up to, I think 16 million graded cards across the big four, 7.7 million of them are TCGs. So that's, of course, across the PSA, SGC, CGC, and Beckett. That is up, combined across the four grading sites. TCGs is up 74% year on year. 7.7 million. And we can only, again, this would be an inference, so I'd save it for the end of it, but we could maybe infer, and like I said, I'll get into more of this at the end, we could maybe infer the majority of those, or at least a fair portion of those, are Pokemon trading cards. So, man, I suppose the other thing is people are grading TCGs more than ever, is the other thing we can take away from this slide. The next one, this is more obviously graph-based, but this is a graph of the items graded per month, and this retraces all the way back to 2022 as well. We can see, or we can infer or we can extract, I should say, a couple of things from this. One is PSA is the clear leader. And the second thing is PSA is trending up. And it's a pretty nice little trend line heading in the north direction, isn't it? Like PSA are just killing it in the grading space. Obviously, clear leader and trending up. And if we look at some of the others, they've been pretty stable. Like Beckett has been pretty stable for the last 2 years. So are they on the downward trend? I don't know. When it comes to Pokemon cards, of course, we know, Beckett Black Label, like that holds strong, holds firm in terms of pricing. It's stronger than a PSA 10 in a lot of cases. So, right, now let's, with all those figures in mind, I think like I said, some of you might have seen it before, some of you, this might be the first time you've seen it, but overall, we can just go sort of, wow, they are just some serious numbers. And to extract two main points out of all of that, they are some serious numbers and it's trending upwards. There's more cards being graded than ever. So what does that mean, right? And predominantly this is obviously a Pokemon card investing channel. So what does that mean for our investments? What can we take from that? What can we infer from that? I think if we make our first inference, it would be that out of those 7.7 million TCG cards graded in 2023, surely half of them at least would have to be Pokemon cards. I know there's been some other popular cards. Of course, Yu-Gi-Oh! Would still send cards in for grading. Of course, Dragon Ball Super, One Piece is, of course, taking out Flesh and Blood, Magic the Gathering. Like, there's plenty of them, but you would feel Pokemon, just the volume of cards that Millennium Print Group with Pokemon Company International print in the English version, and of course the Japanese is separate, but you just think the sheer number or volume of cards they're producing would equate to a fair percentage of that 7.7 million TCG cards being Pokemon cards. So we would just be guessing if we said, it was 3 million or it was 4 million of those 7.7. All I'm going to say is we could hazard a guess a fair percentage of those are Pokemon cards. So with that in mind, lots of Pokemon cards, what impact does that have on your collection? What impact does that have on your single cards? What impact does it have when you grade those cards? And here's the first impact. And this isn't an inference at all. This is fact on an impact that it has, right? And I'm going to use two modern examples and refer it back to two older examples, because the other bit of information I haven't showed on here when it comes to the grading side is it shows that the percentage of 10s as the year goes along. So in 2023, TCGs produced something like 62% 10s compared to any, I suppose, vintage TCG cards, which they're calling sort of 2010 and earlier. You're down around in some cases 10%, 8%, 15% of Gem Mint 10 rating. So obviously, it's clear that when you get a card straight from the pack, which is fresh off the printer, straight into a pack, straight into your hands, straight out of the pack, straight into a sleeve, straight to grading, it's got a much higher chance of achieving a 10 than a card that's been sitting in binders for a long period of time, or a pack that's been collecting dust in someone's cupboard for 20 years and then it's cracked open and it's, maybe the printing quality wasn't as good back then. Like, there's lots of factors that come into play. My point is, of course, modern cards have a much higher chance of achieving a 10, which is great, leading to more cards being graded and a higher PSA 10 population. So let's jump into it, right? Here's my first example, Umbreon VMAX from Evolving Skies. If you buy this card raw, and these are sales straight off eBay, by the way, I went to sold listings, they've happened in the last few days. So this card, sorry US viewers, you get a lot of love when it comes to having things in your currency, but these are going to be in Australian just for the time being, but I'll I'll relate it back to US. We'll chop and change a little bit. So Umbreon VMAX typically sells in Australia somewhere raw between $600 and $800. Now that would be in US dollars somewhere between $450 and $550 US dollars. That's its raw price. Okay, in the last few days, it's also sold as a PSA 10 for 1,450 Australian dollars. And that's roughly the going price. I went through a fair few other eBay listings and there's lots of like $1,600 best offer accepted, or $1,550 best offer accepted, or $1,650 best offer accepted. So it would suggest that it's selling somewhere between 1,400 and 1,500 Australian dollars as a PSA 10, which is what, 800-ish, 900-ish, 800 US dollars. So what can we extrapolate out of this? The difference between raw price and graded price is about 2x if you get a 10. So you're going from sort of 6 to 800 Australian dollars to about 14 to 1500 Australian dollars, and convert them to US prices. It's all the same. Like it's about a 2x difference between a raw copy and a PSA 10 copy. Now, here's another example, right? And you could do this across nearly any modern chase card, whether it's a Giratina V, whether it's a Charizard from Obsidian Flames. It's going to ring true in most cases. Gengar VMAX, raw. Here's a sale from just the other day, 290 Australian dollars. So pretty much bang on 300 bucks, which equates to about, 180-ish US. If we go to a PSA 10, same thing. This sold in the last couple of days, 650 Australian dollars in a PSA 10. Same thing, 300 bucks to a touch over 600 is roughly or a tad more than 2x your money. And if you equate those to US prices, it's about 400 as a PSA 10. So same thing, 190 to 400 US or 300 to 650 Australian, you're roughly a touch over 2xing your money from going from a raw copy to a PSA 10. Now, you might already be ticking over in your brains what sort of point I'm going to make here if we compare it to older cards, vintage cards. Now, of course, PSA 10 populations for older cards are nowhere near as high as what they are for modern. But just to give you a couple of examples, right? The Skyridge Charizard in a holo, not the reverse, not the box topper. This is just the standard holographic Charizard from Skyridge. One sold on eBay Australia recently for $1,000 raw. That's about $650 US dollars. If we compare that to a PSA 10, and this was sold in the US, but of course it's come up on eBay Australia, you'll see it says 13,200 or something, which equates to about 22,000 Australian dollars. But if you do the sums, okay, the values aren't important. What I'm getting at is a difference between its raw price and its graded price in a PSA 10. It's about 22 times its value. Another example, and let's fast forward a fair bit to Call of Legends set. Okay, great set. Let's look at one of the Legends cards, the Rayquaza. Raw, this sold recently for about 500 Australian dollars. I've grabbed this off eBay US because it's a bit harder to find some of the rarer cards in eBay Australia. We don't have the volume of sales that you guys have over in the US. But it works out to be about 500 Australian dollars, and I think it sold at auction for $5,000-ish US, which equates to about 8,300 Australian. Now, if you do the sums, it's about 17x its money, and that's the whole point. Don't even worry about the figures. The point we're getting at is how much it's changed between its raw price and its PSA 10 price. So it's about 17x its price from raw to PSA 10. Holo Skyridge, Charizard, 22x its money. Now, you could do this across a range of cards, and you're going to be sitting somewhere between 10 and 30x your money for vintage, or depending on the era, versus it looks like you're only roughly doubling your money on a modern card. So this, I guess the point I'm getting at with the massive impact and influx of graded Pokemon cards is your graded cards aren't worth as much, or I shouldn't say they're not worth as much, but they don't command the premium like they used to. What does that mean in the grand scheme of things? Well, I think we're starting to get into some unknown territory almost. Like back in the day, if you had a PSA 10 first edition Charizard, or even now, it's absolute Hollywood. You are killing it. What a fantastic card to own. You've got hundreds of thousands of dollars in your back pocket. Is any modern card ever going to do that again? Perhaps a super rare promo, but not something straight out of a set. It's just not going to happen anymore. So if we then cycle that around onto what's going to happen when it comes to sealed products, sealed products are still going to go up. Don't get me wrong, they will if we put our investing hat on. But we can't expect them to ever go to places like, of course, first edition base set cards, Skyridge booster boxes, Aquapolis booster boxes, even things like Call of Legends booster boxes, or Black and White Plasma Storm, or any of the EX boxes like Team Rocket Returns or Deoxys. We can't expect that now. And the reason those boxes are worth so much is not only are they rare because they're a collectible in themselves, as in they're such a rare sealed product, but if you did ever choose to open it as a streamer, even pulling some of the EXs, even if you got 6 EXs out of the whole box, and that's all you got out of an EX series box, if you graded them all and they all achieved 10s, you're still getting some huge amount of value out of that box. If you were lucky enough to get a gold card, a gold star card, and it graded a 10, you know, you get, in some cases, you're getting close to the price of the box back. And look, I don't know. Like I was saying, it's uncharted territory that we're heading into, and I don't know what the answer is. I think, you know, in the grand scheme of things, we shouldn't expect, like I was saying, those gains that we from boxes that we got in the past. Are they going to cap off somewhere? I mean, look at the best modern example is probably Team Up. That Latias and Latios, you know, alt art and a PSA 10 commands really good dollars, as does a lot of other hits inside that set. So the box price, it's super rare as a collectible in itself, but then if you did open it, you've got the chance of pulling some of those awesome chase cards, which could be worth really good money. So there's a real direct correlation between box price hits and also the possibility of them grade. Like, it's all gambling Pokemon cards. The possibility of them grading a 10, which just adds some serious heat and value to the box. I think all that makes sense. Hopefully you got something out of the video. Please let me know your thoughts down below on it all. It's crazy numbers, isn't it? I'm Michael. This is Poke Oz. Catch everyone next time.